I saw something kind of interesting in a Nextshark, actually, a post about a place in South Korea called Prison Inside Me. And it is a place where people pay, I think like $90 or something, to get locked up in solitary confinement for a day. It's like a hotel, right? But it's a retreat because I feel people there may have, this is probably similar across the world, but the pressures of modern society.
Yeah.
And being overworked, overstimulated. And it's a place where there's no electricity, essentially. I mean, there's lights. You can read a book.
Yeah.
But there's no devices. There's no internet. There's no interaction with anyone. And it's an outlet for these people who, as I said, are like, overstressed.
Yeah.
And it made me think a lot about mental health and how different cultures deal with mental health.
It's so funny because you got people in America paying for like Zen retreats and yoga retreats.
Yeah.
And you've got people in South Korea paying for a prison retreat.
Yeah.
And so it's like everybody's just looking to have a taste of a different culture.
It's funny because my friends also go on, you know what Vipassana is?
Yeah, of course.
So it's like 10 days where you don't speak, you can't even look at anyone, and essentially you're just meditating the entire day. And that's one outlet of trying to get your mental health back in order. I think a lot of Christians, they like to pray.
Yeah, there's a really great I think a Franciscan monastery up near Sierra Madre, Arcadia.
Yeah.
And you can go, you can spend the day. You don't have to be silent, but it's very quiet and peaceful and reflective.
Yeah.
And I've gone there a couple times. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And in the West, a lot of people go through therapy or, don't get me wrong. I power to you, but if someone else, the next person that talks to me about their journey or manifesting.
Oh, God.
Or abundance or all. Oh my God, I'm going to kill myself. But I get it. Everyone has their way to deal with things.
You find what works.
But it's made me think of a few things about how Asians deal with mental health and how oftentimes in our culture, it's a bit taboo to say if you have any mental health issues.
That's true.
In Chinese, if you say 精神病的话, like 神经病, it means you're crazy.
你心里有事.
Yeah,
right?
It means you're like psychotic.
Yeah.
It's not as clear cut where I'll say it like this. When I told my mom, that when I was in high school, oh my God, I'm so depressed.
Yeah.
What'd she say? Looked at me. She's like, what the hell are you depressed? What are you talking about? Depressed.
She said, you got a house?
Yeah.
You got a bed? Yeah. And I'm cooking you dinner right now.
Exactly.
So
she's like, do you know how the struggle I made to get here? Do you know what I went through as a student? Do you know that we didn't have food growing up? We didn't, X, Y, Z. I heard it for about an hour. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'll never be depressed again, Mom. Thank you.
Or I won't tell you I am. I'll be depressed quietly.
Yeah, exactly. But then I realized, depression and mental health, I mean, people might hate me for saying that, but it's a rich person's disease.
So this is great. So just this morning, actually, I was talking to a friend, Dr. Kevin Nadal. He's a leading Filipino psychiatrist. He's a professor in New York City.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the roots of psychiatry and how, in psychiatry, there's something like 5 core personality traits.
Yeah.
It's all based on one study of 300 white men and their wives in Baltimore.
Okay.
And that's become the norm for psychiatry the world around.
Okay, right.
And they haven't expanded the data sample. People have critiqued it here and there, but fundamentally, and no one's challenged this, the roots of he was saying things like extroversion and introversion.
Yeah.
Being neurotic or not.
Yeah.
The ways those are prescribed and analyzed and diagnosed are still all based on this one thing.
Yeah.
So what he was sharing with me this morning, we were on Zoom chatting. He was saying, in his eyes, what we need is an expansion of psychiatry, right?
Yeah.
So depression shows up and means one thing for, like, you know, an American kid living in a suburb with 2 parents at home, with decent jobs.
Yeah.
Different things. And because there's one norm, because fundamentally we're still American kids in the suburbs.
Yeah.
It's different if you're, you know, an agricultural worker in rural China. It's different if you're, you know, Filipino living in Manila. It's different if you're Indian and you're living in Mumbai.
Or even a first-generation immigrant here.
Exactly. So his whole thing that we were talking about this morning, he was telling me, you know, psychiatry is a useful tool. The problem is so often what's going on is what's fed into it isn't the right data.
Yeah.
And so the wrong questions are being asked, the wrong factors are being assessed.
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting because I agree. Depression, the way it's defined right now, you talk to somebody scrapping for survival as a first-generation immigrant, working a restaurant or working a small business.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, I don't have time to be depressed. This is my normal.
Exactly. I want to stay alive, bro.
Yeah. And so what he and his friends, people like Dr. E.J.R. David, another Filipino-American psychiatrist, scholar at the University of Alaska, what they work on is expanding understandings of mental health to not just be like, yo, there's one norm, and that norm is a suburban American middle class, you know, married household.
So what these studies really ignore is Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
True.
And when people don't have their first tier and second tier needs met yet, it's really difficult for them to understand that there is an enlightenment or there's any other type of mental health issues that they have to deal with.
If all a psychiatrist can tell, right? Yeah, somebody who is unhoused.
Yeah.
And they talk to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, hey, you know, you need to do some breathing. You need to calm your heart rate. They're like, motherfucker, I need to find housing for tonight so the police don't pick me up.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. If that's all the psychiatrist can say, it really is just for rich people.
But the mindfuck about this is, let me tell you, is that, for example, in America right now, you are already, let's say, in a higher tier need level or development as a society. So all of us are very privy to mental health and depression and everything that we talked about. But the issue is that people are struggling. People still are struggling for housing. They still don't have their first tier and second tier needs met yet. There's people on welfare. There's people, you know, there's living on the streets, etc. But they've already lived in a society where they can feel the effects of mental health.
A few years ago, I read a really good think piece that said America is not a developed nation. There's 2 Americas.
Yeah.
There's one America that's very developed, that has all the resources anybody needs.
Yeah.
And then there's another America that's actually much more akin to a third world or developing nation that your experiences as fellow Americans can vary drastically based on where you live, but especially how much you make.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in the US, it's kind of been the frog in boiling water, where it's kind of been slow. But in China, it's completely, let's say, 5x the speed of the development of the US.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you had one generation of parents who had to struggle.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, their next of kin right now are all, I don't want to say living in abundance, but they definitely are living in another tier economically than their parents did. And they are experiencing these mental health issues that their parents didn't. So you have this clear gap, this divide there. And that's why you have the lay flat, the tangping. I don't know if people know about that phenomenon.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So basically there is a phenomenon in China that a lot of the youth there have decided to, I don't want to say become complacent, but basically they've experienced too much stress in the workplace and decided to lay flat, 躺平.
It's their version of quiet quitting or bed rotting.
Yes.
They're tapping out.
Yeah. Because
out of the rat race.
They've had too much pressure given to them. There's the work hours are far too long for them because, again, society has shifted into such a higher economic level that was different than their parents. And their parents work 7 days a week, work,
the standard was already
14
high.
hours a day,
Yeah.
And expecting that of their children or the next generation just had its mental toll on the youth.
Yeah.
So that's happening there. And like, I'm very encouraged that psychologists right now are beginning to factor in all of these different data points
Exactly.
to adjust how to deal with this mental health crisis.
Yeah, this is what I've learned from friends who are Asian American psychologists.
Yeah.
Actually, my buddies put out a book recently, and they were talking about, so first order analysis means you talk about the individual.
Yeah.
Second order is you talk about the family systems, the relationships around them.
Yeah.
And then third order thinking, which is what they really were writing about in this book, is when you analyze the society around them. And you need all of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because an individual might be disordered.
Yeah.
Or maybe the individual is actually healthy. It's their family that's disordered.
Yeah.
Or maybe the individual and their family are, reasonably fine, but it's the society that's sick, that's unhealthy, that's causing stress and fear.
That made me think of a lot of first and second generation Asian issues in America. I mean, even Everything Everywhere All at Once touched on this, right? Whereas you have your first generation immigrant parents have a deep cultural divide with their children here.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of friends who've been to therapy. They try to bring their mom to therapy with them, and it fails miserably. And what you begin to realize is because the mom isn't as receptive because of all of the reasons that we just kind of laid out to mental health. They're either in denial of it, they can't recognize it, it doesn't exist in their psyche, that a lot of times the children have to bear the brunt of it and just deal with it and understand. And to be perfectly honest, it's a long journey, and it happened within my family even, where you kind of have to. I mean, it's tough to be. I even hesitate to say the bigger person.
Yeah,
but the one to step up, and the one to adjust your own mentality and understand your parents aren't in the same mental health playing field as you are. And it's not that they don't love you, or it's not they don't care about you. Yeah. It's just because they love you in their own way, whether that be providing for you. They may not go to your school play. They may not say, I love you all the time. They may constantly be criticizing you, calling you fat, but they're providing for you. They're giving you an education. That's their love language.